Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, but before I jump into this, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, please, like, subscribe, leave a review. But without further ado, today's guest is Todd Shapiro. He's actually the CEO and co-founder of Red Light Holland. So Red Light Holland is pretty much pushing forward the boundaries of psychedelics in the public markets. It's great having you on the show, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Really appreciate being here. If you do hear some noises in the background, my one kid's doing homeschooling, my other kid's 1 year old. So I apologize in advance for kids having a good time or maybe screaming.
All good, all good. So awesome. So why don't we jump right into this? Why don't we start with a little bit of background, because for people that you don't, maybe don't know who you are, or what's your sort of origin story?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm an old man. I'm 47 years old and lived a life or two, but I come from the media background. I sort of done it on a very high level for 20 years within the Canadian landscape. Had a very popular show I was the co-host of, terrestrial radio, and then moved to show a program onto Sirius XM. It was also hosted as a podcast. Was one of five best new podcasts in 2014 on iTunes. Done it on a very high level. Very fortunate to talk to some extraordinarily popular celebrities, I guess they call them. Anyone from individuals like Jeff Goldblum or Jerry Seinfeld to famous athletes, you name them. I've talked to them as well. And it's been a great career. And about I guess almost a year ago now, I started to think about, new opportunities in my life that I'm passionate about. And for me, working is always sort of tied to passion. And that's why I ended up going into radio, because I was having a lot of fun there. And it was a passion. So it really didn't feel like work, but it did create a lot of anxiety. Performing every day created a lot of anxiety. And I started to explore anxiety, and I started to explore things like mental health. And a lot of my radio show host deep dives into learning about things, learned a lot about psilocybin. So I think that's what leads back to Red Light Holland Corp. I'll let you answer more questions, but really at the end of it all, when I did this pivot, it was because I found a new passion, which was wanting, without making any medical claims, wanting to be a part of positive change through psychedelics and through psilocybin more specifically. Went out and raised a bunch of money, about $4 million, took a company public, raised more money. And here I am today now, being the CEO of this company that's traded on the CSE, with lots of little hurdles, of course, in a new industry, but lots of excitement and lots of opportunity. And I'm looking forward to answering more specific questions for you, Max.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm actually really excited for this. And the team you've put together is absolutely phenomenal. From Russell Peters to Tony Clementa to Bruce Linton, and a whole bunch of other people that you've put together with this team is absolutely crazy. So I sort of want to dive into that. So when you started the company, how did you actually how did you start by putting that team together? And start, bringing these people on board and start that sort of founder team?
Yeah, great question. For me, everything in life is about relationships and connections and connectivity and people you trust who've had a lot of success. And so we can start off with Russell Peters, who's the chief creative officer of the company. And, there's big plans for Russell down the road to get involved. COVID slowed that down a little bit. Russell was to go to Amsterdam with us when we were there recently, wasn't there. Russell's a very genuine person. So Russell will grow genuinely with the company as we grow. But listen, I knew him through the media, and I knew him by interviewing him in the day many different times. One of Canada's most popular comedians of all time, one of Canada's wealthiest comedians of all time. All you have to do is look at like 2013 or 2014, and he was like right on the Forbes list of highest paid comedians, right under guys like Jerry Seinfeld. So, this is like a big deal, right? And I love people with success. I got to know Russell more personally when he started to come on my show on Sirius XM. He sort of took a liking to me in terms of being very proud of me, evolving my career. He was always very encouraging to me, and always set a great example about hard work, but persistence pays off, and just be yourself. That word authenticity, which I spoke of earlier. And, we became friends, and I always thought, man, if there's ever an opportunity to bring Russell involved into something that I'm doing outside of media, I think his creativity and his success alone would be an invaluable asset to us and ultimately shareholders, meaning that Russell is a entity on his own. He's his own product, and he's a product that he grew from a small town in Brampton, small suburb of Brampton, to global sensation. It's an amazing success story, and I always like to learn from success. So Russell came on through a personal connection and personal relationship. Same with Bruce Linton you speak of. So Bruce and I got to know each other through Canopy Growth, meaning when he was the CEO there, I was sort of pitched, I guess, to, sorry, there's the kid screaming. You might be able to hear it in the background.
All good.
And for me with Bruce, I was sort of Canopy Growth's, Canadian brand ambassador, worked for Tweed, hosted their concerts, brought out Snoop Dogg on stage, in the shindigs, like these types of things in Smith Falls. But what Bruce and I, like, it was really interesting because I was intimidated around Bruce at first. And yet Bruce is a guy that, at the time that his market cap must have been in the multiples of billions of dollars, he's sitting there blowing up beach balls and hitting them into the audience at their shindigs, at their concerts. And I just kept thinking, like, this is how I like to be, like, connect with individuals, connect with everyone. It don't just be this certain corporate, person that people fear. And I love Bruce for that reason. So we just kind of started talking. Turned out Bruce was actually a fan of mine in the day on the radio. And we really connected there. And Bruce has been a mentor to me ever since, and he's come on as our advisory board chair, and he's very active in the company at Red Light Holland Corp. And again, you talk about success. Success breeds new success. I always like to say you learn from success. I love learning from successful people. And clearly Bruce has been extraordinarily successful. So it's really great to have him. And then Tony Clemente, you mentioned, Canada's former health minister. Again, a media relationship. He used to come on. He was a conservative guy. I'm a little bit more party agnostic with conservative leanings and, some liberal sort of thoughts and views as well. But he always made time for our shows. And, the old show I used to do and the newer show on Sirius XM before I left it, always came on when I asked him. He was just always accessible. And this was a guy at a very high level of government. I mean, there were even times when he was, flirting with the idea of becoming a prime minister running. So, heading the Conservative Party. So really interesting stuff that Tony would just always make himself available. And of course, again, success. It's hard to be in politics at a very hard level. And we're, listen, whatever party you lean on or lean towards, I think sometimes we forget what politicians go through and the scrutiny they go through, because you're automatically going to have about half the population that sort of despises you because of your political leanings. And you really put yourself out there. And I admire Tony for putting himself out there, for evolving his views around sort of the drug culture, especially when it comes to psilocybin, because I think it's dangerous to compare all drugs, because Tony's had very hard stances on certain drugs like safe injection sites and stuff. But he really believes in the future of what psilocybin can potentially do with these benefits. So personal relationships got Tony aboard, and he also works very closely with companies and advisor.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible, and your team is like phenomenal. It's like that's one thing that really interested me about this company, was that, like, the team you have together is like crazy. The people that you've brought on to start this company and push it forward. So I want to go a little bit deeper into actually starting this company, which is psilocybin and all this sort of industry that doesn't really exist in the public market outside of, like, let's say Netherlands, or maybe some other parts of the world. Like Canada and US, it's still illegal and stuff like that. So how did you go about actually figuring out how to do this and saying, like, this is like, how can we make a business plan out of this and actually do some good with
question.
it?
Well, and it's interesting because you say, like, the markets where you can do it. And really, I look at the market as like a world market. It's just who's doing it illegally right now. Like, there is a market for psilocybin. There is a market for microdosing. There is a market for hero dosing. It's being used every single day. People are buying this. There's websites up and running in Canada and the States. It's getting shipped through Canada Post, and it's getting delivered to your door, and it's illegal, but yet it's happening. And there seems to be very little crackdowns on it happening. So, exploring the space and exploring, the potential to get behind a brand build, really is what this is, was exciting to me, and doing it in the legal jurisdictions that Red Light Holland Corp can do it. So it started off with a concept and an idea to really help on the recreational side while supporting medical and science, and then trying to expand from there and seeing what the company can do, but doing it in areas where we can. And so we decided to start off in the Netherlands. And listen, me and a couple of co-founders had been in the Netherlands in the past, had been to Amsterdam, more specifically had tried magic truffles, and anecdotally had really enjoyed them and enjoyed the experiences that were associated with them. So we thought, well, why not try to work towards building a bigger brand? Because most people don't even know of the truffle itself, but let alone any companies that are associated with the truffle. They always think of magic mushrooms. And so, one of the things I do well through my media background is build brands. And, I've been a part of brand building and influencer support and ambassadorship, et cetera. So it was really neat to go out and raise the money on a concept that we could go and try to build a brand here recreationally and potentially do something towards the science, whether it's an EU GMP facility one day that maybe could support a medical grade truffle or supporting science in other ways. This is what we want to do with some of our funds, but we want to be careful about it and spend intelligently. So after we've raised the money, we've proven to the market that we can accomplish things quickly, which we have. We have product on shelves right now in smart shops, technically in fridges, because the truffles that we sell as microdose packs max have to be in the raw, natural, and unprocessed form. So they have to be, they can't be manipulated in any sort of way. They can't be extracted. They can't be put into gel capsules. So these are all the things we learned through legal opinions and legalities. It took time to get here. But now the product is in fridges because it has to be kept refrigerated at a certain temperature so it doesn't spoil. We're in stores, in smart shops. We have announcements. You can see what smart shops we're in, 6 or 7 of them. We have an online website, imicrodose.nl. And you can go there and order it within the Netherlands, of course, 18 plus. So we're moving along, very rapidly, and we're very proud of that early growth. Listen, still very early, still very speculative. It takes a while to build a brand to the point where I want to build it to, which is world recognition, like a Red Bull. But we're slow baby steps, and we've sort of conquered the first initial step and look forward to future growth. And ultimately, to answer your question, listen, I studied the market. I think there's a big market for it. Not only within the Netherlands is a different sort of brand because they don't really do a lot of microdosing sort of promotion within the Netherlands. It's more about hero dosing. It's more for tourists. It's really not for your average individual, which is, I want to hit a Ketel One drinker. I want to hit a Moët drinker. I want to hit a professional. I want to, a different type of individual who can explore the microdose without making any claims. I want them to try to kind of tell us what their experiences are with it. And we have a whole I microdose because campaign. Why do you microdose? And we're learning more about it, and we hopefully will continue to grow, and we hopefully will continue to expand. But in the meantime, our plan is put into action, and I think that's a good first step.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you covered a lot there. So with that, like, what are some misconceptions with like psychedelics and mushrooms and the truffle, and because like the majority of like how media is blanketed like right now, like you guys are gonna have to do that's a really interesting thing is because this is a new market. Well, it's not like a new market, but a new sort of public market in the sense that it's been blanketed as like, oh, it's bad, you shouldn't do it, like how weed was, and now weed's like now like I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and you go around and you meet like new people, and you meet like, I'm a younger guy, but you can meet like parents and stuff, and all like everybody's just, everybody smokes weed now pretty much. And it's like a normal thing now. It's like drinking beer. And I think in the future, I think it's going to get a lot more normalized. So what are some misconceptions with some like stereotypes with like the psychedelics and stuff?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think of sort of psychedelics as you could potentially go on bad trips. And I think people relate to it the way they got it illegally in the day in college, and went with their buddies, and they went to the forest and they tried to take a shit ton of magic mushrooms and see what the result was. And ultimately, a lot of people talk about them as eye-opening, awakening experiences. And some talk about these bad trips that, they wish they had guided therapists that could help them get through it, to deal with trauma, to sort of overcome, certain situations that they're now, interestingly enough, faced with through the psychoactive ingredients. And listen, it's all about education and information. So yeah, of course there's stigmas. Stigmas don't bother me. I've always been a stigma fighter my whole life. I mean, even there's a stigma of me being the CEO of a company wearing a ball cap. Like, I could care less about what people's stigmas are on people or on products. I think what's most important is get to know those people or get to know those products. So if you get to know me, you would get to know a lot more than maybe what your perceived view of me is. And if you think of products, if you get to know the products more than just what your perceived view of them is, well, then I think you're sort of now informing yourself, you're educating yourself, and you're opening up your mind to going, my goodness, are there benefits? Why has there been, breakthrough access and granted for FDA therapy and clinical trial use? Why is there so many anecdotal studies that show that it helps with anxiety, it helps with post-traumatic stress disorder? Why is it that the Canadian health minister recently worked with TheraSil, a nonprofit organization who are working very closely with end of care patients, sadly, who are, really dealing with their end of their lives or terminally ill, and on compassionate grounds have granted them the use of magic mushroom? Like, why are they, and the reason being is to help them with their anxiety during, sadly, their remaining days. So, for me, it's like, if you can open up your mind through education, information to learn about this stuff, well, now all of a sudden you're going, okay, well, wait a second. Why the hell did I think a certain way in the first place? Why did I stereotype a drug? Why did I stereotype a sector of drugs? Why don't I owe it to myself with, by the way, the internet, where there's a lot of information? And listen, a lot of it's not true, but a lot of it is. And you can sort of source out the ones that are. There's a lot of different studies going on right now, how psilocybin can help with potentially weaning off, the harder prescribed drugs like opioids. There is a lot of, you can speak to or read a lot of anecdotal stories of those who, military veterans, et cetera, post-traumatic stress disorder and what it's doing for them. I interviewed a hockey player on my old show, Daniel Carcillo, who won 3 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks, and talked about how he's ready to take his life until he did a magic hero dose of magic mushrooms, which he believes completely reverses brain patterns and has saved his life. And he's now, really getting into the sector himself. That's how much he believes in it. So open up your minds to the stuff, learn about it, and look and ask me questions, ask people in the sector questions. People like to make themselves available. And listen, I'm no expert, dude. I'm learning with the rest of them. I really only got into this about 2.5 years ago. I'm not a pioneer. I'm not an advocate. I'm not part of maps.org. I'm not friends with Paul Stamets, who goes on Joe Rogan and talks about the benefits. I'm just someone who's done it myself and says, wow, this helped centered me. This helped balance me. This has helped, improve the quality of my life. So why can't I make this legally for now, and hopefully in other markets where it could be legal, allow other people to maybe share their experiences with what I'm sharing with you right now, and potentially of the same benefit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like you were saying, it hasn't been studied too much. And I think there's, like, as time progresses and more people actually becomes normalized, and there's more funding behind actually studying it and seeing like what you can actually do with it and the health benefits of it. I think it's going to take off a lot more. So I want to ask you now about like building this brand and sort of like changing sort of like a stigma around it, and sort of making you guys stand out from the rest of the competition. How are you guys doing that right now? Like, I sort of want to get like advice from you for, let's say, somebody who's just starting a company in a market that's, maybe oversaturated, or, that's like not really existent, like at the, maybe like at the public or legal level, and they want to sort of push through the boundaries like you guys are doing. What would your advice be to them for building brand?
Well, first and foremost, and I assure you, I say this with zero disrespect when I say this, okay? Like, zero disrespect. How many people are watching your podcast and your YouTube views and things?
Right now, because I just started, so I got like average listening of 50 people per episode, and then for YouTube it can like maybe from like 12 to I've been lucky enough to get like 12,000 views on one video, but just I'm at the beginning stages. But yeah, that's where I am right now.
This is exactly how you build a brand. You look at every single person who has that opportunity and is, I'm grateful that you asked for my time. You give people their time, because I tell you what, those 12,000 people, or even those 50 people, they all count for brand awareness. So no one should ever, and listen, when I used to do radio, and I'll never forget this, I was speaking to a comedian named Bert Kreischer. You could go back in my old podcast and find a very famous comedian, The Machine, they call him. Always takes off his shirt, so it's a little creepy. But he's on Joe Rogan. He's like a very popular worldly comedian, like does so really well. And he popped on my Sirius XM show, and I remember I said to him, why do you need to do this? You don't need this extra promotion. Like, what are you doing it? And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm going to come in there. And I don't care if you have 50 listeners, 12,000 listeners, a million listeners. I'm going to take every one of them. They're all going to love me. They're all going to walk away remembering Bert Kreischer. They're all going to come and they're going to download my podcast next, or they're going to download my next special, or they're going to watch me on Netflix. And that's what's going to happen. I'm going to make sure that I seize this moment with no matter what size of the audience. And it's something you got to really, really respect in people. And that's how you start with building a brand. Secondly, what you got to do is you got to sort of understand what that brand representation is. And, for us, listen, we actually pivoted a little bit of our brand. We're really focused first on Red Light Holland. And then, we decided to kind of more focus on the I microdose, because we think that actually connects with people a little bit more, because people know what microdosing is. You can read anecdotally about people's microdosing, and through responsible use and education and information, it's a product that we're putting out there and is out there right now in the Netherlands. It's a way to connect I microdose because. So we really think that opens up the door to, allowing many different professionals of all demographics over the age of 18 who can look to this brand and kind of connect with it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create this I microdose lifestyle. But Max, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like, if you look at the biggest brands in the world, Nike, it didn't just happen overnight. Nike was even in a lot of trouble if you look back in the day until, Michael Jordan teamed up on board. Look at some Canadian successful brands like Canada Goose. Like, this wasn't just something that started like overnight. Canada Goose has been around since I think since the 60s. It was just it was a small, jacket shop, to protect, Canadians from harsh winters. And look how that's expanded. Look at I always go back to the Red Bull story. Red Bull was discovered, I think, in Thailand by the Austrian businessman who tried it. When he had this new burst of energy because he was always traveling so much, and he found he was losing focus and he was losing energy with the older age, and he discovered this brand, and then since then, they brought it to how many different markets now as being one of the most popular energy drinks all over the world. But it don't happen overnight. So the key is always make yourself available, always get the message out there, use your social medias, use your personal communications with people, talk about it, be proud of it, wear your logos on your hats and your t-shirts, and be proud of what you're doing. If you're not proud of what you're doing, it won't resonate with others, and you got to be genuine about it and authentic about it. And I think people gravitate to that passion. And I think ultimately people want to try to support brands that connect. And we're just trying our very best to connect here. And ultimately we want to do our best to connect, hopefully all over the world, because we think that microdosing is something legally is done in the Netherlands, should be able to be accessible for those in markets. And we hope that other markets one day open up.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, those are also like a lot of great points. So I want to touch now on so how are you guys going about, like, let's say giving advice to breaking into a new market? Is that like, does that revolve around the same with like branding? It's like sort of what you just talked about there, or how do you go about like breaking into a new market? Because like cultures are all different everywhere, right? Like from Canada to the US,
Yep.
and even in provinces or states, it's completely different cultures. So how do you go about going into a new culture and distinguishing yourselves as like, this is the brand, this is the brand you want to use, like Red Bull or something?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. When I first started Red Light Holland Corp, we have a individual on our team whose name's Hans Derricks, and he's from Horst, the Netherlands, where our facility is. So he's a Dutch local, Dutch native, and he gets the culture. We pitched Red Light Holland at first, and we shared it with him, what he thought of it. And part of the reason was, listen, if you go to Amsterdam, if you go to the Netherlands, it's the Red Light District is sort of already a brand that's been built. Whatever you think of it, it's a name that just kind of registers and resonates. So we did want to piggyback off it resonating, he's sort of using that to resonate. But then, when we spoke to Hans, he was like, hey, listen, I love it. There are some that don't love the Red Light District who are Dutch natives because they think of it as a seedy area and et cetera. However, for me, if you go, and I think if you just go on dutchinfo.nl or Dutch or Netherlands.nl, I forget what the website is, but it's, one of these official sites where you learn about the Netherlands, like a Discover Ontario type of website here in Ontario that you would find learning about Ontario. You would see that the Red Light District was really out there at first to end the stigma of sex work, to legalize a profession that people were proud to go into, to tax it, make it regulated, and really for protection. There's a lot of protection that put in for place for any individual who wanted to get into the profession of sex work. And I actually thought that resonated with me, which was, well, wow, like people are proud of their choices. People are doing it and proud of being sex workers and proud of making a living doing this, and ending the stigma around it. And of course, regulating it. And if you think about, psychedelics, that's what I thought was important. How do we regulate it? How do we end the stigma? How are we proud of what we do? So there was that rationale and that thought beyond it. With that being said, when I started to go to Amsterdam more, and I went in February and I went recently in September, I started to really listen to some of the Dutch culture that Hans warned me about, that was still like, well, the problem is tourists have gone in and it doesn't really represent that anymore. So, that's why we kind of pivoted more on the product side of it, is the iMicrodose. This is really what we're trying to put out there. iMicrodose, because it's an iMicrodose lifestyle, whether that means you iMicrodose a product legally in the Netherlands, or you drink less coffee during the day, you drink less alcohol during the day, you sort of find more balance during the day. So it's really become about trying to build this brand of an iMicrodose lifestyle. And that's one of the things we really want to work on, getting out there. And, with that being said, I think the Red Light Holland Corp still resonates with a lot of people, especially in the investment world. It's kind of a quick name. It's easy to remember. And it's still something I am proud of. And I'm proud of like the way this team has put it together. And by the way, Max, we put it together, which is me and Hans. Like, it's not like we hired these firms for 80 grand for developing a storyline around this name. I'm from the radio world. Every day we had to create content and create new content. You had to put it out there, and you had to, hopefully it stuck. And if it continues to stick, then you have success. I think sometimes companies focus too much on what the story is behind the brand, or why it, I think they hire these firms that ends up costing them a ton of money, and they're kind of not just moving forward, because you can adapt your brand too. Look at Nike. Every other week, you'll see a new thing on their website, whether they're focusing on Zoom shoes, or the new Air Jordan release, or a wonderful new diversity campaign, whatever it is, it's still under the Nike brand. So I think there are ways to kind of work on stuff without focusing too much on how it resonates, as long as you're creating content and new content. If that one stuff doesn't stick, at least you're putting it out there for people to discover.
Okay, awesome. I sort of want to. I know we have a little bit of time left, and I sort of want to, because you have a lot of experience in the radio industry and sort of building that brand. And sort of maybe a little bit selfishly, I want to ask you, how did you go about building such a great brand in the radio industry, and increasing like your viewership and getting your sort of your content out to more people?
Yeah, listen, let's be very honest. It's some of it's luck. I think a lot of it was talent. I think a tremendous amount of it was just simply hard work and perseverance. And the other thing was I had platforms. I was very lucky to have a platform, whether it was terrestrial radio and working there, and having sustainability and people that we connected with and people that liked us. And then Sirius XM was another platform. But ultimately, Max, if you're getting into this, and anyone getting into any sector, whether it's podcasting, whether it's trying to have aspirations to be, a famous actor one day, or whether it's growing a business, I think hard work is the first thing I would always recommend people. Like, without hard work, you'll have no chance of success. And if you do, you got lucky. And there's a very small few who get lucky without hard work. And don't look up to those people. Don't look up to a social media star who just happened to be in the right place at the right time and went viral, and now they have success, because that's like winning the lottery. You shouldn't look to win the lottery. If you do that, you're never going to be successful. So you got to put in the work, and then you got to be good to people. Be good through that hard work. Treat people well. You can't always be perfect, but be as good as you can, because you're going to want people to help engage with you, to share your stories, to share your podcast, to share your product, to share their experiences with it, to help build that brand through word of mouth. And then ultimately what you want to do is, if you can get investments and get investors, you want the investments to be proud of what you're doing, and then the investors share the story, and that helps lead to capital, because you do need capital to help build the brand at the end of the day. But through that hard work, you should be able to access that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And that,
Did I lose you? You're frozen.
Oh,
I got you now.
Do you have anything else to add on that? I don't know if I cut you off or something.
No, you didn't cut me off. Actually, I think I cut myself off. No, I just think, hard work and patience. things rarely happen overnight in this world. You know, life is about hard work, and I watch sometimes, you know, I'm 47 years old now. So I like to think I speak with some wisdom here, is that like nothing's been given to me. And, you know, I think we're growing up and looking at what's happening on social media, and people are expecting things to be given to them to have success, or to try to take down others to get it. And that's just not the way you build a business. That's not the way you build personal relationships. That's not the way you build, you know, whatever brand you want to build, whether it's your own show or your own business. You got to work with people, and you got to work hard with those people, and you got to expect patience for it to grow and it to catch on. And that's what I've always done in my personal career, and ultimately have had great success because of it. And secondly, it's what I'm like, you know, trying to do with Red Light Holland now. It's just to have patience, build it up, get product to market, get people to discover that product, hopefully expand from there, and hopefully continue to grow a business. And I'm going to put every single ounce of sweat, blood, and tears, as they say, into this business to grow it. And that's my mission.
Wow, that's that's awesome. Yeah, and that like that again is great advice with just like yeah, like I like how you're saying, like right now it's just like you see these people that like on you know, let's say TikTok or Instagram or something like that blow up, and then you're just like, oh man, how do they do it so quickly or something? But like if you actually look at the majority of them, they've been doing it for 3, 4, you know, some of them 7 years beforehand, before they had that, you know, that overnight success story, right? And they've been consistently working hard and working hard and working hard on it. Yeah, but I think that's a great place to end this episode. Thank you again, Todd, for coming on the show. It was amazing talking with you and hearing your story about Red Light Holland. I highly recommend, guys, that if you know, if you like this podcast, you know, highly recommend that you go over and check out Red Light Holland and see what they're doing. They also have merch that I believe is going to be coming out. Like the hat you're wearing right now is part of their merch, which looks awesome. And you know, you can find out a lot more information about what they're doing. But again,
yeah, should be coming out. Merch should be coming out. Yeah. Oh, I got you back.
okay.
I was just going to say merch is coming out. Merch is coming out soon. And listen, you know, always do your due diligence. But I just want to remind people we are traded on the CSE. We're a publicly traded company. TRIP on the CSE is our ticker symbol, TRIP. And redlighttruffles.com, at imicrodose.nl. If you're in the Netherlands, you can get our product. And if you're 18 plus, and reach out to me at I am Toddy Tickles. It's an old radio school name, but I'll always get in touch with everyone who reaches out.
All right, awesome. Well, so thank you again for coming on the show, Todd. It was amazing speaking with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Max. I appreciate your time.